I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years.
Is it interesting? Okay, that was California Governor Gavin Newsom malfunctioning as he was being asked a question that he didn't expect and didn't really seem prepared to answer. Now, Newsom malfunctioned and said the word interesting a total of 8 times after he was confronted on the topic of AIPAC and the Israel lobby. Just to give you a little bit of background, Democratic voters have really soured on the issue of Israel. Okay, they are not supportive of what Israel has been carrying out in Gaza, in the West Bank, and much of the Middle East, to be quite frank, and have now been paying closer attention to whether the politicians they've been favorable toward are being funded by the Israel lobby. And so Democratic lawmakers, state and local leaders, you're now on notice. If you're taking AIPAC money, you're gonna be asked about it. And try to do better than what we're about to hear from Gavin Newsom.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting. Why did I say that? Not relevant to my day-to-day life.
Okay.
Which is just interesting.
Listen,
it's interesting you say that. JPAC perhaps more, but AIPAC less and less.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is just interesting.
What's interesting about it?
That it's just interesting as you bring up AIPAC that it hasn't been part of. I'm just reflecting quite openly and honestly.
Okay, I love this so much for so many different reasons. So obviously Newsom sounds idiotic, but for those who don't know, the podcast that he's appearing on is the Higher Learning podcast, which is hosted by Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay. And for whatever reason, my eyes were fixated on Lindsay because her face was so funny as he kept saying interesting. She was just like, you could just see she's like, oh, this is not going well for Gavin Newsom. By the way, the conversation with Gavin Newsom, I listened to the whole thing. I want to commend them for asking tough questions because that wasn't the only tough question they asked him, and that's how it's done. I love it. All right, now Representative Khanna was unimpressed with Newsom's comments, writing that this is not interesting. It is defining for the future of our party. We must be for human rights, not take PAC and lobbyist money, including AIPAC, and call out the genocide to win the trust of young voters and have America be a moral leader in the world again. Agree, Van Lathan? Now, a few minutes earlier, Lathan had asked Newsom if he was in favor of halting all military assistance to Israel, and let's see how that went.
Are you in favor of halting military assistance to Israel?
I mean, the timing's a curious one when the precipice of a phase 1 deal that was announced today and a ceasefire.
Even if this is over.
But I get it.
Yeah.
So look, no, I'm not prepared to say that I would support a blanket exemption for military support of Israel. That said, I've been very vocal in my opposition to Bibi Netanyahu. Said he doubled down on stupid on Meet the Press like a year ago. I'm sitting here on your behalf, you're a taxpayer, as the only governor in the United States that sent a field hospital to Gaza and got it in through a third-party country and is disgusted by what's happened in Gaza as a human being, as a father, to see these children and how this war has been perpetuated by Bibi Netanyahu. I also have deep respect for the right of the state of Israel to exist and defend itself.
Okay, he seems defensive, if you ask me. And look, Lathan did follow up with a pretty good point. So if Newsom hates Netanyahu so much, then why would he want to, why wouldn't he want to stop sending Netanyahu money, military aid? Let's see how he answered that.
I guess the question is, if there's an admission or an understanding that the prime minister of a country is acting in a way that's either irresponsible, callous, or inhumane, why would we continue to support that country militarily?
I think that's the executive's role to leverage that. We do that a lot. I mean, that's part of the game of leverage. But to eliminate support across the board is something, to me, is a bridge too far. Conditioning in a thoughtful way with a flexibility of or criteria, flexibility with conditions that are changing on an hourly or daily basis or weekly basis as it relates to not just what's happening in Gaza, but what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Syria and other parts of the Middle East is where I think you have to be careful. And I just don't think there's a clean way of answering that without the nuance that I think it deserves.
Well, there you have the governor of California competing with Kamala Harris in the word salad Olympics. What was that? What was that? Let me just list off a bunch of other Middle Eastern countries and talk about leverage and then do the little weird like shoulder shimmy. Like, you are not guided by values or principles. It is very obvious Newsom destroyed the state of California and yet feels entitled to the highest office of this land. It's gonna run for president in 2028. I get that I am deeply, deeply biased against him as a victim of his leadership here in the state of California. But let me just give him a tip. I don't know if he's even capable of doing this, but let me just give him a tip. Be authentic for once in your life. You're afraid of Israel or you support Israel, but either one, doesn't matter, has led you to supporting Israel and backing it economically, financially, even though we're talking about a country that had an economic surplus in 2021 when we haven't had one since 2001. Now look, as governor of California, his views on Israel don't matter that much, but his views on Israel matter a lot if he is the head of this entire country, if he's the president of the United States. And I will not vote for any politician that takes any money from the Israel lobby. I never thought I would be a single issue voter, but that's my single issue at this point. Because I see our alliance with Israel as an existential threat to the United States. I said it. Take a good hard look at where we were standing economically in the year 2000. Did we have debt in 2000? No. But our debt blew up after 2001, after the 9/11 attacks on our country. That spurred endless wars that we fight allegedly for our own national security, but it turns out, no, not for our own national security. A lot of those wars, including the war in Iraq, our boots on the ground in Libya, our engagement in the proxy war in Syria, where we literally indirectly armed Al-Qaeda terrorists, and now there's an Al-Qaeda terrorist leading the country of Syria as a result. That was all done on behalf of Israel. We paid for that. We're in debt. At least $37 trillion. Who knows what the number is now, considering the big beautiful bill added another $4 trillion in debt for that. We're bailing out Argentina. We're providing more military aid to Ukraine. We're just bleeding money, bleeding. I guess that's America first. So the real question is, does Newsom represent a paradigm shift or not? And I would venture to say that he doesn't. He's super defensive, doesn't give you straight answers. He's pathetic. I can't stand him. Now, we have very little publicly available information about whether or not Newsom takes money from pro-Israel organizations, and that's because he has run in and won in state and local elections. So it's harder to track that money, unfortunately. But we did find an article from 2008 in which Newsom went to an all expenses paid trip to Israel, and we all know what those trips are about. It's all about propaganda on behalf of Israel to get these politicians to support Israel and also to spy on our politicians, as we've learned recently. Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco at the time. The goal of the trip is to create connections between Bay Area and Israeli business leaders. No, thank you. I don't think we need that. Nonetheless, a Newsom spokesperson said this. Many executives, including Richard Bloom, husband of US Senator Dianne Feinstein, are going. That is the least surprising thing I've read in my entire life. He will not visit the Palestinian territories during his stay, the mayor's spokesperson said, also unsurprising. And this month, Newsom signed AB 715 into law in the state of California, which is intended to stop anti-Semitism in schools. So it is unbelievable. So it was supported by AIPAC, among many other leading Jewish organizations. Much of the requirements in the law, which takes effect on January 1st, are open to interpretation. Teachers must be factually accurate in lessons and adhere to unspecified standards of professional responsibility while avoiding advocacy, personal opinion, bias, or partisanship. Just want to remind you all that our textbooks were published by a Mossad agent for many decades, Robert Maxwell. He's luckily dead now. But Macmillan, McGraw-Hill, those were the social studies and history books, textbooks that I grew up on. And I had no idea that there was a Mossad agent publishing them. That's not an issue though. The issue is we need to stop anti-Semitism by hindering the speech of students who might want to be critical of the genocidal campaign that Israel has been engaging in. Got it, okay. It also creates an Office of Civil Rights within a state agency, meaning taxpayers are gonna fund this garbage, which will include an anti-Semitism prevention coordinator to consult with school districts and advise lawmakers on preventing anti-Semitism in schools. Newsom has acknowledged that the bill will likely require follow-up legislation since the language is so vague. We have a housing crisis in the state. We have more homeless people in California than all the other states combined. This is what they're spending their time on. The state legislature, along with the leadership, political leadership in California, is beyond embarrassing. Their state is in shambles. I would know, I live here. And you have Newsom and the rest of the Democratic state legislature fiddling around with policies to make Israel happy. It's gross.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.